Chapter 13. The administration of the drug and the monitoring of her responses took place in the room in which chemotherapy patients received their treatment. A mixture of people, some sadly young, some bearing the loss of hair wound up in their scarves, some supported by a friend or a relative, but all joined by the patients with which they sat in their chairs hooked up to their drips. There was a change of faces halfway through the day as the first wave of patients completed their treatment and a new wave appeared for the afternoon. We were there for the day, and I brought along a book to read to Julia, but she was unable to concentrate, tired out by the effort to make it there. But she had received her first dose of the drug, and there was a comfort in that. Julia's melanomas were measured and recorded on camera so that their progress could be monitored over the coming weeks. The very fact that they were external allowed the researchers to make direct observations of the drug's effect, and we learned that her cancer was a mutation of a particular interest to the researchers. She had been asked if she would volunteer the surgical removal of a couple of her external tumours, as any evidence gathered from the growths would provide valuable ammunition for the research. She hated the thought of surgery, but took very little time to consider her response, understanding how many lives may someday be influenced by her decisions. One could only admire the dedication of those conducting the trial and their determination to fight what they viewed as a disease that is peculiar to Australia. Use of the drug would involve fasting for 2 hours before ingestion and for 1 hour afterwards, a routine which would have to be developed for our day. But it was possible to inch the clock slowly forward, so that she would be able to function socially, join others at a meal table. By this time we seemed to be armed already with an arsenal of medications to deal with the nausea, the constipation and the pain. The exact number of doses until the next day of monitoring were dispensed, so that the researchers would be able to record any missed doses. There would be a continuation of the scans as the researchers recorded internal changes. She slept for most of the day, only waking for the hourly monitoring and for a couple of brief sojourns into the outside world for a quick puff of her cigarette. She looked at peace as she slept, and I felt that if this was the worst that we could expect, then all was possible. We had only to wait for the tumours to shrink. In all of her years of travelling, Julia had never been to the Opera House. So we went to the city again on the train and got off at Circular Quay. We sat on the bottom of the step in the sunshine, daunted by the climb, but content to be there watching the crowds. I brought a journal in which to write a children's story, as I had a concept that was rattling round in my head. It would fill in my time while she was sleeping. And with all the pleasure she always received from her love of giving, she insisted we stop at the oyster bar on the quay, so that she could buy me a plate of oysters and a glass of wine. I ate as she sipped on her water, content with my pleasure. A week and a half had passed since the initial administration of the drug, but Julia was unable to observe the results of her melanomas, which were on her back. She invited one of the residents to join us for dinner one night, a lovely man who apparently had been coming to the cottage annually for a post-operative check-up on his heart. We watched television together after the meal, and she asked us both to look at her tumours. They had not shrunk at all, but there had been a change. The largest one had developed two dark eyes and spidery veins that spread out from its centre. I could only hope that the change was an indication for the better. But we declared a new name for them, and from that moment we were referred to them as the beasts.